All right, so this video is about how to do the week 20 spiral review, and week 20, 21, and 22 will all be the same. So the first question says, what is the value of 4/10 to the second power? So I'm going to start by writing this out in expanded form. So what does 4/10 to the second power mean? Well, what it means is 4/10 times 4/10. So I need to work that out. So I'm going to go ahead and stack it up vertically and then do the multiplication. So 4 times 4 is 16. Bring the 6 down, carry the 1. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. Put my placeholder. Then I'm going to do 0 times everything on top. 0 plus 4 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. And then add them together. Then my next step, because there was a decimal in the problem, then I need to actually put a decimal back in the answer. So I have one place or one number behind the decimal in the first factor, and then one number behind the decimal in the second factor, which means I need to have two numbers behind the decimal in my answer. So my answer has to be 1600ths. And then when I put it in my gridded response, I can put it in each number and the decimal all get their own boxes. And then I bubble in the 0, and then for this box, I bubble in the decimal. For this box, I bubble in the 1, and then for this box, I bubble in the 6. All right, next question, number 2. The table below shows the types of foods and quantity of each that were sold at a bake sale. So we have brownies, they sold 6. Pound cake, they sold 12. Cupcakes, they sold 14. And cookies, they sold 20. What is the ratio of cookies sold to the other 3 foods sold? So I'm writing a ratio, and I'm writing it for cookies to the other 3 foods. So a ratio is a comparison of two things. You can write a ratio in three different ways. You can write it in symbol form with the word to, or you can write it in fraction form. So we're going to actually, I'm going to show it in the symbol form or with the word to. The first thing we have to do is we have to look at what we're comparing. We're comparing cookies to the other 3 foods. So I need to look in my table and see, well, then how many cookies were sold? And there were 20 cookies sold. So that's going to be my first number. Then I'm comparing it to the other 3 foods. So I'm looking to see, well, what were the other 3 foods that were sold? There were brownies, pound cake, and cupcakes. So I need to add these together. So I'm adding 6 plus 12 plus 14. Well, 14 plus 6 gives me 20. And then 20 plus 12 gives me 32. So that means that the other 3 foods had a total of 32. So that means my ratio would be 20 to 32. So I can write it in symbol form, or I can write it with the word to. And both of those are equivalent. Next, find the product of 1 and 657 thousandths times 2 and 3/10. So I'm going to be multiplying 1 and 657 thousandths times 2 and 3/10. If I do it in the standard form, I would set it up like this. Remember, the decimal does not have to line up with multiplication, so you don't have to add any zeros because that actually just makes the problem longer and a little bit harder. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this multiplication and ignore the decimal and pretend that it's not there. So I'm just going to multiply it like it's 1,657 times 23. So I'll start by doing the 3 times each number on top. So 3 times 7 gives me 21, carry the 2. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 2 is 17. Bring the 7 down, carry the 1. 3 times 6 is 18, plus 1 is 19. Bring the 9 down, carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 more is 4. And I'm done with the 3. Now I'm going to put my placeholder, and I'm going to multiply 2 times every number on top. So then 2 times 7 is 14. Bring the 4 down, carry the 1. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. Bring the 1 down, carry the 1. 2 times 6 is 12, plus 1 more is 13. Bring the 3 down, carry the 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. And then I'm going to add them up. So when I add them up, that gives me 1. This gives me 11. This gives me 11. This gives me 7 plus 1. That gives me 8. And then this gives me 3. My next step is to place the decimal in my answer. So I've got 3 numbers behind the decimal for the first factor and 1 number behind the decimal for the second, which means I need 4 numbers after the decimal in my answer. So I got to move 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means my answer will be 3 and 8,111 10,000ths. When I put that in my grid, I have to put it in as 3.8 8111, and everybody gets its own space, including the decimal. Then I'm going to bubble in the 3, then I'm going to bubble in the decimal, then I'm going to bubble in the 8, and then I'm going to bubble in the 1, the 1, and the 1. So now let's go to number 4. For number 4, a chef uses 2 tablespoons of olive oil for every 3 tablespoons of butter. How much olive oil is needed for 12 tablespoons of butter? So now we've got this comparison of oil to butter, and we're trying to figure out if we were to increase the butter from 3 tablespoons to 12, then how much would we need to increase the oil? So I can set up a table or I can do a double number line. Either one would work. So let's do a table. So I'm going to set up my table and start with what I'm comparing. So I'm comparing oil to butter. And I know there were 2 tablespoons of oil for every 3 tablespoons of butter. And then the question says, if I were to use 12 tablespoons of butter, then how much oil? So I need to be looking to see, well, how did I get from 3 to 12 in my table? And in a table, you're either using multiplication or division. So for this, to get from 3 to 12, I had to multiply by 4. And we learned whatever you do on one side, you have to do to the other side to get an equivalent ratio. So that means I need to multiply 2 times 4, which gives me 8. So if I use 12 tablespoons of butter, I need to use 8 tablespoons of oil. All right, number 5. Danielle had 5 boxes of keychains with 15 chains in each box. She sold 8 keychains at the flea market on Saturday. Which of the following equations represents the number of keychains Danielle has now? So I know she has 5 boxes of keychains, and there's 15 keychains in each box. And then I know she sold 8 of them. So I'm looking to see which one of these expressions is going to match what's happening in the story. So I know she's got 5 boxes, and I know she's got 15 in each box. So if she has 5 boxes with 15 in each, I'm going to do 5 times 15 to get that total. And then I know if she sold 8, then I'm going to have to subtract 8. So my expression has to be that she's got her 15 times 5, and then she's taking 8 of them away. So I'm looking for an expression that matches this. So when I come back to my answer choices, this one is 15 times 5 plus 8, so that can't be it. And then this one is 15 times 5 minus 8, so then this would be my answer. So my answer is B. So let's go to number 6. Number 6 says, Casey paid $55 for 20 gallons of gas. Which of her friends paid the same amount per gallon of gas as she did? So she's got Jackson, Faith, Xavier, and Dominic. And then they tell us for each person how many gallons they bought and then how much money that they spent. And you're looking to see who paid the same amount per gallon, the same amount per gallon as she did, she being Casey. So I have to first figure out, well, what did Casey pay? So if I want to know what Casey paid per gallon, I'm going to have to find the unit rate. So I'm going to have to take the $55. So this is for Casey. I'm going to take the $55 and divide it by 20. And this is one of the problems that you can use a calculator. So I'm going to use my calculator and figure out what is 55 divided by 20. And it gives me $2.75. So that means Casey paid $2.75 per gallon. So I'm looking for who else paid $2.75 per gallon. So I'm going to have to go through each friend in the table until I find the friend who paid $2.75. So let's start with the first friend in the table, which is Jackson. So Jackson got 12 gallons and he paid $33.60. So let's start with him and say, well, what did he pay per gallon? So if he paid $33.60 and he bought 12 gallons, then how much did he pay per gallon? So I'm going to do $33.60 divided by 12. And that means that he paid $2.80, and this is Jackson. So did he pay the same amount as Casey? The answer is no, so it can't be Jackson. So I got to go to another friend. So let's look at the next friend, which is Faith. Faith bought 11 gallons and paid $30.25. So I'm going to figure out what she paid per gallon. So I'm going to take $30.25 and divide it by 11 and see what she paid. So 30.25 divided by 11 gives me $2.75, which is the same as what Casey paid. So that means that her friend Faith paid the same amount, and Faith was answer choice B. So now let's go to number 7. Okay. Joshua ran 2 3/4 miles around the track. Each lap around the track is 1/4 mile. How many laps around the track did Joshua run? So he ran 2 3/4 miles. That's his total. That's the total amount that he ran. And it says that each lap was 1/4 of the mile. So each lap is 1/4 of a mile. And the question is, how many laps around the track did he run? So I'm trying to figure out how many laps did he run to get to a total of 2 3/4. So because I already know the total, that means it can't be a multiplication problem, because multiplication is about trying to get to the total. Because I already know the total, and then I know what each lap is, then I'm going to have to use division to find, well, then how many laps did he take? So I'm going to have to take my total, 2 3/4, and divide it by 1/4. So I'm going to take 2 3/4 and divide it by 1/4. So I have a mixed number, so I have to change this to an improper fraction. So I'm going to make the circle. First, I'm going to multiply 4 times 2 to give me 8, and then I'm going to add 3 more, which gives me 11, and then I put that over the same denominator, which is 4. And then this fraction can actually stay the same. I need a common denominator before I can divide, and I have one, so that means at this point I can go ahead and do my division. These are the same, so I can basically cancel them out because they equal 1, and then 11 divided by 1 gives me 11 over 1, which basically equals 11. So that means that he did 11 laps, and if I put that in my table, I would simply put it in as 11. So he did 11 laps around the track to get to 2 3/4 miles. All right, question 8. Jackie had one piece of fabric that measured 3/4 yard. She cut the fabric into 3/8 yard pieces. How many pieces of fabric does Jackie have now? So she had one piece of fabric that measured 3/4 of a yard. And then she cut the fabric into 3/8 yard pieces. So if she's cutting them into pieces, that means she's basically dividing it up into 3/8 size pieces. So I have to take the fabric that she has, the 3/4, and divide it by 3/8. So 3/4 divided by 3/8. I got to start by getting a common denominator, so I need to list the multiples of 4 and 8. So multiples of 4, 4, 8, 12, 16. The multiples of 8 are 8, 16, 24. I'm looking for the smallest one they have in common, which is 8. So 8 is my new denominator. Then I'm looking to see how did I get from 4 to 8. I multiply it by 2, so I'll do the same to the top, and 3 times 2 gives me 6. And then how did I get from 8 to 8? I multiply by 1. I'll do the same to the top, and 3 times 1 gives me 3. Now I have a common denominator, so now I can divide. These basically equal 1, so I can cancel them out. And then 6 divided by 3 gives me 6 over 3. And 3 goes into 6 2 times. That means she has 2 pieces of fabric now. Okay, question 9. What is the remainder for 877 divided by 32? So I'm looking just for the remainder. So I have to set up my division problem. 877 is getting divided by 32. So that means 877 is what's getting divided. So it should go inside my house. So 877 should be inside, and then 32 should be outside. I do not know the multiplication tables of 32, so I need to make my list. So I got to do 32 times 1, which is 32. 32 times 2, well, 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. 32 times 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. 32 times 4. 4 times 2 is 8, and 4 times 3 is 12. 32 times 5. 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. I'll stop there for right now, and if I need to go higher, I will. So I'm going to start with the 8. I'm going to see, can 8 be broken into 32 groups? Is it big enough? And no, it's not, so I'm going to put my 0 up top. And now I'm going to combine the 8 and the 7, and now I'm looking at 87. If I have 87, can I break that into 32 groups? The answer is yes. The question is, how many can I put in each group? So I'm trying to get as close to 87 as possible without going over. 96 is too big, 64 works, which means I can put 2 in each group, so the 2 is going above the 7. 2 times 32 is 64. I'm going to subtract, and that gives me 23. Now I'm going to bring down the 7 and then divide again. So I'm going to basically have to take 237 and divide it into 32 groups. Now I stopped at 32 times 5, which is only 160. I feel like I can probably get some more in there, so I'm going to go up a little higher. So I'm going to do 32 times 6. 6 times 2 is 12. Carry the 1. 6 times 3 is 18 plus 1 is 19. I'll try 32 times 7. 7 times 2 is 14. Carry the 1. 7 times 3 is 21 plus 1 is 22. That's 224. Then 32 times 8. 8 times 2 is 16. Carry the 1. 8 times 3 is 24 plus 1 is 25. I only have 237, which means it can't go in there 8 times. I can't put 8 in each group. So that means I can only put 7 in each group. So the 7 is going above the 7. And then 7 times 32 is 224. I'm going to go ahead and subtract these, and that gives me 13. Because the question asks, there's nothing left to bring down. Because the question simply asks what's the remainder, this is what I have left over. So the remainder is 13. 13 is what I have left over. All right, 10. Jan bought 4 books for the following prices: $3.95, $2.95, $5.95. She gave the clerk her money and received $2.15 back in change. How much money did Jan give the clerk? So I want to know, how much did she give the clerk? How much money did she hand to the cashier when she wanted to pay for her items? And if she got change back, that means she didn't give her exact change. She had to have given her more than the total to get change back. So I first have to figure out, well, what is the total amount of money that she paid for the books? So I need to add these up. So I'm going to add up $3.95, $2.95. So $3.95, $2.95, $5.95. Being sure to line up my decimal. So then 5, 10, 15, and carry the 1. That 9 and 9 and 9 gives me 27, plus 1 more gives me 28. Carry the 2. Bring down my decimal. And then 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 plus 2 is 7. And 7 plus 5 is 12. So this was the total for the books. So when she went to the cash register, the cashier rung up her books and told her, your total is $12.85. Then she handed her some money, and then the cashier gave her $2.15 back. The question is, what did she hand her? So if I want to figure out what she handed her, I'm going to actually need to take what she paid, and I'm going to need to take the total. I need to take the total for the books and the amount of money that she got back, and I need to add that all together to figure out what she gave the cashier. So I know the total cost of the books was $12.85, and I know she got $2.15 back in change. If I add these together, that's actually going to tell me how much money she gave the clerk. So 5 plus 5 is 10. Carry the 1. 8 plus 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, and then 1. So this gives me 15, which means that Jan gave the clerk $15. So when the clerk told her that your total is $12.85, she gave her $15, and when she gave her $15, she was able to get $2.15 back in change. All right, as I mentioned before, week 20 and 21 and 22 will all be the same. So hopefully this helps. If not, feel free to come and ask me questions.